Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, and for quite a while we've been able to upload another standard deck tech. Despite that the format is already updated with the new set, Paraksha LB1, we're still continuing to explore some of the deck builds. And for today's deck feature, we have another version of the Blue-White Control deck, which it's quite in variance with the previous upload that we did. As you remember, the last time we did a control version for which we are going to win by a poison counters, but this one, this version goes again with a build with somewhat a similar win condition, but with this new card, Mindsplice Apparatus, as its core component for getting card advantage in this build. So this is a user submitted deck list, Blue-White Mindsplice Control. I've added this one as control deck since it's already well known that using the Mindsplice Apparatus to gain advantage with the instant and sorcery spells display would need to have the deck would also composed of mostly instant and sorceries, and just a few of these support cards to help out with the board advantage and of course card advantage in the late game. So without further ado, we do get to break down the deck build. So we have 4 artifacts only for Mindsplice Apparatus, 15 instants, 14 sorceries, and 2 enchantments with 25 lands at our disposal. We have then the sideboard again later on that we are going to discuss. And again, we'll recap the card. Limiting your upkeep, you will put an oil counter on Mindsplice Apparatus, and then those instant and sorceries you cast cost 1 less to each oil counter. So as you go along with this, given that it's also non-legendary artifact, which means you can play multiple copies of this and benefit for each of these passive effects that can basically discount your instant and sorcery spells you cast for each of these oil counters. Now, how do you go with this for your instant and sorceries? So instants are basically your counter spells, card draws, and of course some of the spot removals here. We have March of the Otherworldly Light, as good as spot removal for exiling artifact creatures and enchantments. Syncopates as sort of mana counter and goes well with the Apparatus since you're paying X and paying more to be able to counter their card. Then we have Experimental Algorithm, this new version of a card draw. It's looking to be like an Anticipate, but benefits well with Proliferate bonus, wherein you will be able to proliferate your oil counters added on the Experimental Mindsplice Apparatus. Then you also have 2 Negates, which for the solid spot counter spell in the late game, and also as a card draw, and also a life gain effect is the Union of the Third Path with 2 copies, wherein you will gain life equal to the number of cards in your hand. So what goes with that with the card draw is that we have these 4 copies of Surplus Scrutiny. This is just a sorcery card, but it will have an instant effect if you're paying for X that is 3 or less. That's basically having 5 mana to draw 3 cards for an instant, but as long as you go with the Mindsplice Apparatus effect of discounting your cost for your cards such as this one, so you would be able to pay less but basically get more of the card draws for this mana value, even if the late game, which is very beneficial as the card draw goes, and it will draw into some of your win conditions. So what would be your win condition here in this deck? We have the options for Blue Sun's Twilight, wherein you can gain control of an irrelevant creature from your opponent with mana value X or less. Then if it's X or more, the X is 5 or more, create tokenized copy of the creature. So basically having 2 threats of that opponent that you have that gain control of could basically win you out from that setup. Another example of your win condition here is your White Sun's Twilight, wherein you will create this 1/1 Prediction Might artifact creature tokens with Toxic, and that's basically win from there by attacking your opponents and having them get a poison counter. So this is again similar from that of the previous Blue-White Control build, but the benefit is that as the more oil counters are added in your Mindsplice Apparatus, the more discount and benefit that you will get from these cards, such as these Twilight cards from new Paraksha. So in support of that, we have some board control effects such as Depopulate, so 2 copies of that, and 4 copies of Blade on Arms that can basically exile those creatures with mana value X or less equal to the number of planes you control. So 4 copies of that card, so making sure that early aggro would be prevented. And of course, temporary lockdown, also a good counter against most aggro decks because of exiling non-permanents with mana value 2 or less. And the bonus also would be able to exile treasures, tokens, and also some shenanigans with artifacts. For example, those anvil decks that has those permanents were basically costing you mana value of 2 or less. Now for the overall deck, it's just basically again mating with the Twilight effects that gaining control of your creatures, opponent's creatures, and having these my tokens swarm them. And those support with these lands have these channel lands as our added spell with Otawara and Iganju, and also these 4 copies of Raffin's Tower and Sparse Garters. It has is preferred of this because the deck would probably go in the late game scenario. So having extra lands of these tri-lands would also have you the option to cycle them for card draw and replace them with the more efficient card from your deck. So another fix would be the Deserted Beach, also some Derek Bridgman. I think I only have 1 copy, and more of the basic lands, especially plains, since you are using Lay Down Arms to benefit for having the spot removal equal to the number of plains you control. Now for your sideboard, what will be your sideboard? It's pretty much very straightforward with this. For more aggro or more control decks with lesser non-creature spells, lesser creature spells, you will have Spare Pierce to support to be able to resolve your Mindsplice for Rakdos, for example, or resolve some of your best cards. The only creature you notice here in the board is 3 copies of Vexian Vindicator. This would probably go well with the deck since controlling early on and dropping a Vindicator and backing up with counter spells is basically a good win condition by itself. So I think for this setup, the package would go with the Spell Pierce and the Vindicator against other control in mid-range decks. You also have Destroy Evil to go with the option of destroying, killing Shieldred or destroying a Fable or Wedding Announcement. We also have the Repost. This is for aggro matchup where you will deal damage to target top creature and you will gain 2 life in the process. And in support of that anti-aggro, we have another additional copies of Temporary Lockdown, 1 more copy of the Populate, and 1 copy of Farewell. So for other spot removals that may need exiling, we have this one, the lone copy of Banish into Eternity. You can be able to exile target non-permanent, but only if it's a creature that would cost 3 more. So the purpose here will also go with exiling Planeswalkers, relevant enchantments, relevant artifacts, and making sure that they would not really benefit your opponents. And along with it also is a lone copy of Faithline Needle. You can needle also Planeswalkers, like Honor Bankbusters, and other activation artifacts that may need to be prevented from activating. And that's basically it for this board. We are just looking forward to just go anti with the creatures and mid-range decks. And Vexian Vindicator will also good for those matchups, especially this can be a good win condition for itself, and then also be good against mono red, for example, because damage prevention is very efficient for this creature. And for the main condition, the main win condition again would be sticking with the White Sands Twilight and Blue Sands Twilight effects. So overall, that's pretty much it. Let's go to the average mana cost. Specifically, it goes with average of 2.14, given that this deck would go with the control with the early counter spells, just setting up for Mindsplice Apparatus. But the good thing is that you can go early on as basically turn 2 and turn 3 that would be efficient in countering your opponent's spells, setting up your spot removals and curving into the Populate, for example, to wipe out your opponent's creatures. For color distribution, we have the setup of white spells for 21 and 26 for blue spells, but the producers here are very efficient with 20 for white and 18 for black, with just a little splice because of these tri-lands that are producing also green and black. So last but not the least are your token. You have only 1 token for the Phyrexian Might. That is your token to represent those creatures generated by your White Sands Twilight. So that's basically it for this deck tech. I do hope you see this one in your grinding setup via MTG Arena or MTG Online. And if you've encountered this one or you're piloting a similar build, let me know in the comments below how the deck would go and set up in the curve. Does it look like more of a typical blue-white control deck, or it is curving well with that of a build that can hasten with the Mindsplice apparatus resolving in the battlefield. So that's basically it for guys for this deck tech for standard one Pressure LB1 with your blue-white Mindsplice control deck list. Thank you for checking this video, and see you on the next one, your future standard and pioneer deck techs that we'll have in this channel. Thank you again for watching, and see you on the next one.